Morning, everyone. Trump and Biden in Cleveland last night. Did you watch that? We'll get to that at the end of the show. I didn't want Canada Polly to be usurped by a U.S. presidential debate, especially when so much happened last night. There was so much Canadian news, so let's get into it. CTV is reporting Liberals to face overnight confidence vote on new COVID-19 benefits. Probably the least fanfare for a confidence vote I've seen in a while. Like usually the confidence votes being set up and everything. Make no mistake, there was political maneuvering. The NDP are all over it. And the Conservatives are content to let them negotiate for them, I guess. But anyway, here's CTV. The federal Liberals are willing to put their minority government on the line over the proposal to implement a series of new COVID-19 benefits for Canadians transitioning off the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. The government has announced that they view the vote on the government's legislation to bring in the new aid package to be a matter of confidence, meaning if it fails, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government could fall. That outcome is unlikely given the NDP's pre-stated commitment to back the bill, given that they were able to negotiate an equitable curb transition for those who don't qualify for the new EI program and expanded eligibility for new sick leave coverage. The Liberals are also looking for parliamentary approval to allow the federal government powers to spend all money required to combat the COVID-19 pandemic until December 30th. Just wait till you see what he's spent. $400 million. Trusted partners. I can scroll down a little bit. This key confidence vote will be the first opportunity for the opposition parties to declare both whether they support keeping financial aid going to Canadians who need it, while also weighing in on whether or not they support the Liberal minority continuing to govern amid the resurgence of COVID-19 crisis. Now that the government has shut down debate on whether or not to fast-track the bill, that includes billions of dollars in new spending, an abbreviated 4.5-hour study on Bill C-4 to pass it through all stages of the House of Commons will get underway sometime after 8 p.m. Tuesday night. During debate on the motion to speed up the study, Liberals faced criticism from the opposition parties about the tight timeline to see new measures passed without leaving millions of Canadians benefitless, citing the summer prorogation of Parliament as the reason for the rush now. Together with the NDP, the Liberals would have the majority of votes needed to pass the bill, even if the Conservatives and Bloc oppose it. And we'll find out in just a minute if the Bloc and the Conservatives oppose it. Spoiler. And here's Jagmeet Singh on what he thinks about how well he's doing in the balance of power. The fundamental flaw in his thought process here is that it's government's job to get things for their constituents. And I think that it's the government's job to govern appropriately, right? Like you can buy a toy for your kids if your kids deserve it and if you have the money for it. But fundamentally, it's your job to make sure there's food, the kids have the clothes they need and the articles of whatever they need for whatever activities they're doing. They're clean. You have the money to pay for electricity and all of that stuff and water and all of that stuff to make sure that the household is running. You got to keep the lights on. You got to keep the infrastructure running, the basics, right? And then after all that stuff's paid, then you do the extras. That's the point I'm trying to make with that. But Jagmeet Singh thinks that if you're in government, it's your job to push government to give you more for less, basically. And that I think that's not correct. That's not what a government is there to do. It's not there to buy votes every 4 years. It's not there to say, well, this year, last time we promised this, and this time we're going to promise this, despite not delivering on any of the promises, not even close. Billion trees? We haven't planted one, which is like funny, but it's not, right? And 25% reduction in your cell phone bill. I think Rogers keeps sending me emails saying, hello, thank you for being subscribed. I'm Rogers for the internet, but thank you for being subscribed to our service. Your bill went up by $3 and your contract has been amended. Thanks. It's like, okay, what are you going to do? Like, right? Cell phone? You're going to go and change your cell phone? So really, I don't think that it is necessarily the job of government to give out goodies, but it looks like a leader of the NDP, that's what he thinks. Here we go.
Which would be just thousands of people. We made sure it was expanded and broadened. Now, that was the Liberal government's decision to keep it limited. We fought to expand it. Every step of the way, we were up against a government that wanted to do as little as possible. We fought for CERB, we fought for students, we fought for a wage subsidy that went from 10 to 75%. We fought to make sure students and people living with disabilities and seniors got some help. Along the way, we've been fighting for Canadians every step of the way, despite the fact that we're the fourth party. And the Conservatives and the Bloc, who are official opposition and second opposition, have done nothing for Canadians. They've not secured a single gain for Canadians, and that shows they've got 100 seats and 40 seats compared to our 24, but we've been able to fight for people and secure massive wins while Conservatives have done nothing in this pandemic.
I take your point. I think they would disagree on perhaps the wage subsidy file for the Conservatives and for the Bloc, the seniors file. But I just have a minute left.
They didn't negotiate it. They put their hands up every step of the way. They did not negotiate these things.
Well, they would accuse you of supporting the Liberals in instances where, for example, it resulted in less time in Parliament or less opportunity for accountability. They would accuse your party of propping up a government.
They could accuse.
So I don't get why Vasi is like invoking the Conservatives. Like, well, the Conservatives would say this to you, Mr. Singh. Like, no, have a Conservative there to defend themselves. Don't like wear a Conservative suit and say, hold on a second, you're making statements. Yeah, I mean, he's making strong statements. He should back them up. He represents 24 seats in the House. The Conservatives in the Bloc represent way more seats. He made that point. And he thinks they're doing nothing. I think they're representing their constituents. Why does Vasi Kapoulis get to represent the Conservatives? Why is this okay? It doesn't make any sense at all. And Jagmeet Singh, again, I understand CURB is meant to support Canadians who are affected by this, who need a job, etc. Would it not be responsible to do your job by saying, hey, couldn't we open up? Would it not be responsible to have MPs saying, together in a united way, like, we should open up? There's a lot of countries that, like, now that we have this data in, it looks like the Sweden model is the right model, and the quicker we open up, the better off we're gonna be. Follow that model. I really don't understand. I do understand. Like, I understand that there are other forces at work. I get it. But it is, to me, it's as black and white as saying, like, this is orange. It's clearly black, right? But if everybody just kind of lets somebody believe that it's orange, then it's going to be orange, right? Like, I think we're going into another lockdown, and we're going to talk about that. Brian Lilly as well. But Brian Lilly does a couple of articles about it, so that's what I'm referring to. But without the data to back it up. And I think that is very, very problematic. Why is Vasi Kapoulis wearing Conservative values to defend the Conservatives to Jagmeet Singh? I don't get it. Okay, moving on. City News. Financial aid for workers hurt by COVID-19 get unanimous support in the House of Commons. The Conservatives support it, yes. Can keep doing what you're doing. Good job, JT. The House of Commons has unanimously passed legislation authorizing new benefits for workers left jobless or underemployed by the COVID-19 pandemic. In the process, the minority Liberal government has survived its first pandemic-era confidence test, assuming, at least for now, that there will be no election as COVID-19 cases spike dangerously across the country. Dangerously? I don't think that's true. Dangerously. Where are the hospitalizations or ICU spikes? Anywhere? Toronto? No. When's the last time somebody died in Toronto? Last month? Bill C4, back to the article, passed in the House of Commons in the wee hours of the morning Wednesday after a day of political maneuvering and just 4.5 hours of debate on the actual contents of the legislation. In the end, Conservative MPs who had protested loudly against fast-tracking of the bill and used procedural tactics to hold it up voted for it. So did Bloc Québécois MPs who also opposed the fast-tracking. It must still be passed by the Senate, which is scheduled to gather Wednesday, that's today, to deal equally quickly with the bill. Government House Leader Pablo Rodriguez had announced earlier that Tuesday that the House of Commons vote would be a confidence measure, meaning the minority Liberal government would have fallen if the bill had been defeated. There was never much chance of that, however, since the NDP promised to support the bill, having won 2 key changes to it. And we've talked about that. So really, it's incredible. It's incredible the way the fourth party is propping up an unpopular minority. And maybe the Liberals are more popular now than they were before. But the WE scandal is still a scandal, and their mismanagement is still palpable. It's still being felt. The money going out is not targeted well. And I was going to complain about how much money is going out to foreign agencies. There's another $400 million they spent today, and we're going to get to that in just a minute, right after this Ontario-centric news. Ezra Levent says, it's gross that Doug Ford is celebrating the birthday of the Chinese Communist Party by raising the flag of that dictatorship at Ontario's Democratic legislature. It's a slap in the face to Chinese democracy activists and a betrayal of the two Michaels. And it says Ontario legislature criticized for plans to fly China's flag. When you click on that link, it takes you to this article. Ontario legislature cancels Chinese flag raising event following outcry. So you can't read about the plans anymore. They've updated the article. But this guy, Stephen Chase, says, breaking Ontario legislature scraps raising of the Chinese flag slated for September 30th. In light of the rising number of COVID-19 cases and recommendations by public health authorities, the Legislative Assembly of Ontario has decided to cancel all flag raising ceremonies. Do you think they're using COVID-19 as an excuse? Do you think that that's the only time they've used COVID-19 as an excuse, to cancel this thing, this unpopular thing that created a bunch of backlash. Oh, COVID-19 excuse. Yep, easy, trump card. Boom, gotcha. Increasing cases. We don't want to put people at risk. It's apolitical. We didn't want to make anybody mad or anything like that. Sorry about that, China. I think it's an excuse. I think it's a poorly thought out excuse. I'm not the only one either. We'll read this and I'll show you. Ontario legislature cancels Chinese flag raising event following outcry. The Ontario legislature canceled an event that would have flown the flags of the People's Republic of China on Wednesday to commemorate China's National Day, a gesture that drew heavy criticism given the two Canadians who remain locked up by Beijing on what Ottawa calls unlawful grounds. Former diplomat Michael Korvig and entrepreneur Michael Spavor have been incarcerated for 660 days by the Chinese government in apparent retaliation for Ottawa's arrest of senior Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou on an extradition request from the United States. I scroll down. The Chinese flag was to be raised at 12:30 p.m. on Wednesday in commemoration of China's National Day, which is October 1st. The date commemorates the founding of the People's Republic of China by the Chinese Communist Party in 1949. So I think raising it today at 12:30 is October 1st in China, right? But I could be wrong about that, but I think that might be true. So why? That's interesting to note because today is the 30th and today is the day that they were planning to do it. So were they raising the flag in coordination with Beijing? Like at the same time as Beijing's raising it there, we're doing it here? Is that the point? Yikes. I don't know that, but I'm just speculating. And if that's true, yikes. Okay, back to this. After a Globe and Mail report about the flag raising, Jackie Gordon, the Sergeant at Arms at the Ontario Legislature, said late Tuesday the event and all future flag raisings are being cancelled because of COVID-19. Convenient. Ms. Gordon initially defended the ceremony commemorating China's National Day as apolitical. Yes, raising the Communist China flag at 12:30, the day before the date, over Ontario is apolitical. Okay, back to this. In light of the rising number of COVID-19 cases and the recommendations by public health authorities to be more vigilant than ever, the Legislative Assembly of Ontario has decided to cancel all flag-raising ceremonies until further notice, Ms. Gordon said in an emailed statement. Here is Anthony Furey, and he says, so Ford first tries to argue he has no control over the matter. Then, after outrage is immense, he gets it canceled, but nobody wants to upset China, so they come up with this cheap excuse. Or at least, that's sure what it looks like. It sure does. And if they're not above lying to China with the excuse of COVID-19, do you think they're above lying to you? Do you? I don't. Here is Kevin Pack, and he says, it's fathomable and inexcusable to see these two headlines side by side on the exact same day in Canada. Canada pledges $400 million in global humanitarian aid to help combat the coronavirus, and COVID-19 may delay Liberal pledge to end long-term boil water advisories on First Nations. Now, do you know, just really quickly, here's the first one, and this was from the 28th. Do you know that there's a guy who took dehumidifiers and basically put filters in them, and he can create and industrialize them. So in certain climates, humid climates more, but really anywhere, right? Like in our basement, I have a dehumidifier and it creates water out of thin air. It's magical. But this guy, what he did was he put filters in it, and the water that he creates, the water that is pulled out by the dehumidifier system, is drinkable. And he can create a certain amount of water per day, and the systems can get bigger, right? Like you can buy a smaller system or a much bigger system. And my immediate thought was, why aren't we using these? Why do we send like 6, 7, 8, 10 of them up? How many millions of dollars will that cost? 400 million? Could we maybe put this payment on hold? I mean, I see a solution. I see a problem. I'm a simple man, but right? Like, and dehumidifiers may not be the answer, but my goodness, COVID-19 may delay the Liberal pledge to end long-term boil water advisories on First Nations. Yeah, because, giving $400 million to, trusted partners, Canada will commit an extra $400 million, says BNN Bloomberg, in development and humanitarian spending to combat COVID-19, says Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The new money will go to trusted partners on the ground fighting COVID-19, Trudeau said Tuesday during a video conference at the United Nations, and that he co-hosted with Secretary General Antonio Guterres, I think that's how you say that, and Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holness. And sorry if I've got either of those wrong. Like even testing, right? Wouldn't that be beneficial to say like, hey, this is how we solve this problem in our north, this problem that's been long-standing and this problem that we promised to solve, but we didn't, right? Like Oh, yeah. Yeah, they feel like that. Here's a pundit class. Well, Blacklock's reporter says, picture worth 1,000 words. So, trusted partners. Aren't we trusted partners? And remember what happened with we? And here is Blacklock's. It says, picture worth 1,000 words. Libs narrowly skirt order for more we charity documents. Hold on, I'm getting dinged here. Lament restless toll of scandal that's going to make things incredibly bad for the government, Blacklock's reporter says. And so there's the link. And Pundit Class says, Liberals stonewall vote in parliamentary committee that would require disclosure of emails and speaking fees related to the prorogation and the WE scandal. So that's interesting that the Liberals, those transparent Liberals who want to send $400 million to trusted partners, they don't want to answer any questions about the previous trusted partners that we were supposed to trust with $1 billion and our summer jobs program, right? So skeptical. Color me skeptical. Here's Brian Lilly moving into the government lockdowns, the return of the potential lockdowns. Quebec is locked down. Yesterday I showed you that it looks like Doug Ford is hearing the bells tolling for lockdown in Ontario. And here's Brian Lilly. He says internal government polling shows massive public support for going back to stage 2 of the lockdown if cases keep rising. My latest column on why Ford Nation is likely to give in to the call. And I said, I don't believe these polls. Again, I'm going to say this every time that I talk about polls. I think they can make the polls say whatever they want. If the overall 100% of the respondents don't say what they want, they pull out people who do, and then they say, 48% of women say this, or 28% of people under 35 say this, or whatever it is. And there's a reason they do that. It's because they want to create news. Now, I'm not saying that Brian Lilly's doing that. I'm saying that the people who create the polls do that. They load the sometimes they load the question, sometimes they load the report, right? So, and who knows? Who knows where along the chain the bias is like the bend is in the hose, right? I don't know. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, because if I could, I would try and unbend it, right? I'd try and say that right there, that's the point, that's the problem. But there are so many problems, right? Like, my goodness. Anyway, so on one side, Brian Lilly's saying, looks like Doug Ford is hearing advice to lock down the province. Looks like he's going to listen to it. And then today, this is an hour ago, 2 hours ago, an open letter from 20 doctors, specialists, and professors of medicine at the U of T, MAC, U of O, calling on Ford Nation to go gently and locally in any reaction to COVID-19, point out case rise not matched by other metrics. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. I have been banging this drum for weeks now. I'm glad other people are talking about this. Good. And I don't know if it's enough. I hope it's enough. I hope it's enough. I hope that the doctors and I mean, so far, Ford hasn't implemented a lockdown, but I've seen rumors, I've seen screenshots and whatever, which are unfounded and could be nothing. But I've seen that they're going to try and lock down before Thanksgiving. I hope that's not the case. And I hope the other metrics don't catch up. Okay? I hope people don't start dying of this. I hope that people don't start going to the ICU or hospitalizations start rising. But so far that hasn't happened. So that's good. And I hope that continues. So, and I don't have a crystal ball. I might have a crystal ball, but I can't see the future in it. So, you've got to keep that in mind, right? Who knows what's real these days? Okay, Colin DeMello says, no decisions yet on Thanksgiving or Halloween, but timely advice on Thanksgiving will be coming shortly. Isn't Thanksgiving 2 weeks away? It's the 12th this year, maybe the 11th? I'm not sure. Oh, it's not on my calendar app here. Oh, well, I'm not sure which day it is. It's not very long from Thanksgiving. Didn't they say they were going to have advice for summer holidays and release it very late? There were some jokes on Twitter yesterday talking about we're still waiting for advice on our Labor Day plans, So I think that it's the idea that the government is going to cancel Thanksgiving or Halloween or even have guidelines on those things is, again, not in line with what's actually happening in the ICUs or the hospitalizations. Sure, the case numbers, but again, when you test 40,000 people and get 700 positives, that's like 1.4%. The percentages are third hand from a conversation I was involved in yesterday. So out of the numbers that have been tested, it's like 1.7% positive. Whereas before, we were getting the same number of positive cases with 5,000 tests. And so the percentage of positive tests was like 14%. And so it seems like the very low percentage of positive tests should also be something that's taken into account. But it doesn't seem, it seems like we're teetering. And it seems like they just need to get one thing for the public to believe that one thing is worse than it is, or maybe it is worse for whatever. And they'll use that to lock us down. But I hope so far we're on even keel. Maybe. Here's Toronto Public Health shaming you for getting together for dinner. How dare you? There's 5 people. half the recommendation here. Gatherings of people who are not in the same household have contributed to the recent surge of COVID-19 cases in Toronto. Protect yourself and others by limiting in-person contact with people you don't live with, and wear your mask. Masks don't work, sorry. And the picture of these people, these look like the wokest group. I would never have drinks with these people. I would just keep walking. Sorry, man. I'm out. See you later. I'm sure they're very nice. I think we would disagree politically. Doug Ford says we need more nurses and personal support workers. He should go to Newmarket. I heard there was 95 nurses laid off there. Nurses and PSWs have a giant impact during the first wave of COVID-19, standing strong while protecting the front lines. They will play a critical role in protecting our most vulnerable going into the second wave. The hospitals are still quiet. I don't see the propaganda. It's very, very concerning, again, that the pushes from the leadership is only talking about this spin, oh, we need you in the second wave and blah, 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 not talking about the metrics that really do matter. And yeah, if you're going to hire nurses, fine, hire nurses. But man, tell us the truth, please. Give us the whole story, right? Here's a London high school teacher calls face masks an egregious and unforgivable form of child abuse. I definitely agree with him. I'm not going to read through this. My unfortunate conclusion is this man is going to get fired. I think he's probably going to be chased out of his job in some way. I hope not. He's a brave guy. He says, I'll read a little bit. A London public high school teacher has written an email to a city hall committee asking politicians and health authorities to quash the city's controversial pandemic face covering bylaw, calling masks an egregious and unforgivable form of child abuse and physical assault. Larry Farquharson, sorry if I've got that wrong, Larry, says he always wears a mask while interacting with students as a teacher librarian at H.B. Beale Secondary School, the first public school in the city to have confirmed case of COVID-19. He wrote the email dated September 21st to the city's Strategic Priorities and Policy Committee as a private citizen. The email was included in a packet of public documents for committee members to consider. So, the news, I don't know if they doxed him or if he said in his email to the city that he was a library teacher at this school. But I think it's really odd to lead with the picture of the school. This is where he works. It's weird. The wearing of masks in indoor public places is recommended by federal, provincial, and local health authorities, and in some cases legislated by some municipal governments. There's a lot of confusion and misinformation about the science behind non-medical face coverings, and they remained the subject of vigorous debate. Some studies suggest non-medical face coverings, such as reusable cloth masks, can reduce transmission of the virus from the wearer to others. However, such masks do not protect the wearer from potentially acquiring an infection from other people. In his email, Farquharson called the campaign to legislate mask wearing a shameful farce, a charade, an act of political theater that's more about enforcing obedience and compliance than it is about public health. He's right. He also likened children wearing masks to involuntary self-torture, calling it an egregious and unforgivable form of child abuse and physical assault. Yes, he's not wrong. CBC News reached Farquharson at work on Friday, and while he wouldn't agree to record an interview, he did take the opportunity to explain his point of view for the record. If I were to put my hand over a child's face, that would be a form of assault, he said. I see little difference between the two. Farquharson said he wrote the letter as a way of speaking out over something he sees as a form of political control that trickles down from adults to children who shouldn't be required to wear masks. When there are individual children that don't want to wear a mask, they are ostracized and bullied, he said. I think it's part of the politicization. The debate has become so politicized you can't have a rational conversation. Farquharson said he doesn't want to wear a mask because he believes it restricts airflow and lowers the amount of oxygen he can take in, something experts say is a claim that has no truth. I think it's funny they called him, they asked him his opinion, and then they fact check him and debunk him. But what he said is factual. Look at any of the public exemptions, and any of them say if the mask impedes your breathing in any way, you are exempt. It impedes your breathing just by putting it on. That's clear breathing. Put a mask on. Can you do that? No, it's impeding your breathing. This is you don't need a panel of experts to see this. You can test just for yourself. It's incredible. Anyway, back to this. He says, I don't know why there's a question. It's not natural, he said. I think it's uncomfortable. It's scratchy. Yeah, it's scratchy. It's stupid. Larry, you're right. They're wrong. And they're trying to gaslight you. And they're trying to gaslight me. And I'm not having any of it. Don't listen to him. It's garbage. Okay, Spencer Fernando says, and this is a theme all through the pandemic that I think is funny as well. Funny in a way that none of our leadership wants to acknowledge this at all. Guelph is going crazy over pandemic rules, right? Everybody's wearing masks and whatever. But you know what'll get you and kill you? Opium, right? Opium. Don't let a needle get you in the arm. Like, people running around. Opium. Opium kills more than COVID people, okay? More Albertans have died from opiate overdoses than from the virus during the pandemic. More people in Guelph also. 11 people have died of COVID-19, 14 people have died of opium. I'm not worried I'm going to drop dead of an opium overdose. I'm not worried I'm going to drop dead of COVID-19. And so here it is. I'm not going to go through this. You can read it for yourself. But this is a trend. This is happening in BC, happening in Guelph, happening in Alberta. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about it. That's interesting. Nobody's talking about the mental health, the side effects of being in lockdown. Nobody's talking about the drinking side effects of being in lockdown. And drinking is a massive thing, massive thing. And it's encouraged too. Every single show, lots of television shows have drinking as the central relaxation thing you do. That's weird. That's notable. That's notable. And it's not appropriate. Okay, I said we were going to finish with the debate. 25 minutes. Oh, I've just got enough time. Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe wore a wire. I think Trump was talking over him the way he was to derail whoever was speaking into his ear. But I don't know. Here's the video for the wire. This guy says Joe's wearing a wire.
Bro, got a mic.
Oh, here, we'll watch it again.
There it is. There it is.
I don't know. Here's another angle. He's got a microphone in his, right? Maybe he should have wore a, but I don't know. He did better than I thought he was going to do. He didn't lose track of where he was. He didn't forget kind of what he was trying to say. There was a couple of times during his first answer, I thought he is gone. Like he's off on a tangent somewhere. I don't know what he's talking about. But he got it back. Like he brought it back to the Supreme Court at the end of the question. And it was one of those things where usually if somebody's talking, I have even on here, I'll write down what the question is. So when they go off topic, I can see if you can figure out how they're gonna bring it back. Because like you have to tell a story. We work in stories. Humans are story creatures. So people tell stories to make their point, right? So it was interesting to watch where he went with things and how he wound it back to answer the question, right? Talking about Amy Barrett, Corbett, ACB, talking about how like her stance on abortion or her stance on whatever, and Trump's kind of dodge of that, and like that Roe v. Wade, all of those things were interesting hits. But the first question's answer for Biden seemed long and meandering. After that, he kind of got it back. There was a couple of places where he started talking about economy where the question was something else, but it seemed to make sense within the context of what else was going on. There wasn't any obvious time that Joe was really lost. Just a couple of times where he'd maybe talked about the wrong thing and then got back on track relatively quickly. So he did better than I thought he was going to do. And did he have a wire on? I don't know. That's interesting to see, like that's interesting. And the wire on his shirt there, but I don't know. I have no idea, but it's so interesting to watch. And when Trump went after critical race theory, called it racist. When Trump went after, he said, "Who do you want me to condemn? I'll condemn them." What do you? Who are they? Which like the moderator, and I can't remember, Chris Wallace, I think it was. It doesn't matter. When he said, "Will you condemn the white supremacists?" He's like, "Sure, I'll condemn the white supremacists." Who are they? Like, give me the name. Who do you want me to condemn specifically? That made me laugh out loud. I thought it was so funny because like. Antifa and the people on the left are clearly like Trump calls out the Democratic mayors, calls out Antifa by name. These are Antifa has a manifesto. Essentially, they want to tear down the Western society. BLM. They want to. Well, they're kind of communist, right? They want the end of the family and blah blah blah, reparations and all that. But you can't name somebody on the right that's making demands that's being violent like that. Like who do you want me to condemn? Like where are these violent white supremacists who are doing like burning down Portland? That's not them. That's the left. That's the left. And I think that's the point that Trump was trying to make. So I thought that was so interesting that they gave Trump so much room to talk about that. And like the truth is on Trump's side. Like the last 8 months, if you have been watching anything, you can't blame Trump for Portland. You can't blame Trump for Cuomo's failures on COVID-19, putting the elderly people into old age homes. Like you can't blame Trump for these things. You just can't. And so Trump just kind of stands there and shrugs his shoulders and points at Biden, who's trying to. Biden was good at repeating the same talking point over and over again, saying that Trump's at fault for how scary oh, how bad things are. Trump's at fault. Don't you find him that he's a liar? The whole scientist exchange was so funny. The scientist thing, don't you trust scientists? And Trump says, well, I talked to the scientists. The scientists say this about the vaccine. It'll be ready before. And then Biden's like, well, you don't trust what you say. And Trump's like, well, you trust scientists, right? The whole exchange was hilarious. So, I mean, Trump won that. Biden did better than I thought he was going to do, but he didn't beat Trump, not by any stretch of the imagination. But it's very interesting. And the other part of this was the moderator. Like, Trump was debating the moderator more than he was debating Biden. Moderator and Trump were having more exchanges that were of the level you would expect the opponent would get into. Usually the moderator just has to facilitate the conversation and get out of the way, right? But he was right in there. He was mixing it up. Oh, sorry, Mr. Biden. Go ahead, sir. Finish off your thought. Yep. So very interesting, right? I can't wait for the next debate. I didn't even think this debate was going to happen. I honestly didn't think the debate was going to happen because I thought that Biden would skip out, or Harris maybe. There was speculation maybe Harris would step in, but I don't know. I didn't think it was going to happen. Biden had a better showing than if you didn't know something was kind of off with him. Like, if you didn't watch any of the video clips from the last 6 months from him, where he fades out mentally, you wouldn't know that there was there was a significant deterioration there compared to 2016, right? But watching him last night, you wouldn't see it. So interesting. He did well, but he didn't beat Trump. Okay, thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. I forgot to mention Speaking Moistly. Greg and I hung out yesterday. We talked, and it's up, so check that out. And I've already taken up a lot of your time. So thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful